I've made a copy of ODB 39 and I'm calling this one ODB 40 SQL Join Part 1. We have all our tables normalized. Now we want to create a query with our employee table information and bring in the department name as well as the group name in a single query. This is done by joining the tables together. Let's create a query in Design View. I'm going to add the employees table and the group table and close the Add Table dialog box. The first thing we notice is the query window found our relationship between those two tables and brought it into this query window. If I click on this line, we have it selected. If I right-click on this line, I can delete this join connection or I can edit it. Let's delete it. The join connection for this query is gone. Remember, we're in the query window, not the relationships window. If I opened up that relationships window, it will show all our relationships are still there, and that's a completely different thing. These are join connections for a query. Let's remake this connection. Group ID to group ID. I'm going to right-click on the line and open it in edit mode. This opens up our join properties table. We're going to skip over the tables involved and the options for now. We're just going to look at the fields involved. We see that we've got group ID. Clicking this down arrow shows me all the available fields for that table. So if I accidentally grab that group ID and put it to maybe the hourly wage, I can edit and change this to group ID. And we'll say OK. We have our join connection set up. Now let's add some fields to our query. I'm going to add in the employee ID, last name, first name, and the group name. And let's run the query. This shows us our employee ID, the last name, first name, and group name, just like when we had it on a single table. We've got 27 records on this output. The other thing I want to point out is here on the table row, we see table employees, and table group. If I click there on the drop down, we see that we can choose from table employees or table group, the two tables that we added in for this query. And if we click on the field names, these are the field names for the table below. Here's all the fields on the employee table. And if I click on one of these empty cells, we see all the fields available. We've got the employees table fields as well as the group table fields. Let's look at this query in SQL view. I'll reformat this to make it look a little nicer. Now it's easy for us to see that our employee ID, our last name, and first name are all coming from our table employees, and our group name comes from the table group, our from with our two tables here, and our where. This is the join that brings these two tables together. We're saying where the group ID on the employees table is equal to the group ID on the group table. And this is that join connection that we created by dragging that line over from the one table to the other. Let's save this query. File, Save As. I will call this ODB 40 Join EMP GRP. With our SQL formatted so nicely, we should be able to add in our department name. I'll do that by entering a new line, TBL _ department name. Then in our from, we will add in TBL department and then under our where, we need to add in the and TBL employees department ID is equal to TBL underscore department dot department ID. Let's run this and see if it works. And we see that we added on the department name. And I will save this one as ODB40 join EMP group department. Now let's see what this query would look like in design view. I'm going to hit F4 to hide the result set. Here's our table group, our table department, and our employee table. And our design view looks just as we'd expect it. Let's add another field to this query, like the gender. And then I'm going to put in the criterion of equals male. Now when I run this query, hitting F5, we see that it brings up only the males. Let's uncheck this visible and go back over into SQL view. I'll reformat this so we can see it better. All right, I've reformatted it. Let's rerun this. So it took the male out of our result set, but it's still down here in our criteria. Now, I added this in just to show that we can use any of that filter criteria that we already learned about in our single table queries. It works just as well here in our join queries. Let's save this query as ODB40 join EMP group department males. Looking at this query, even though it's formatted pretty well, the table names are all different lengths. We could make this SQL more readable if we used a table alias. The table alias works just like the field alias we saw in an earlier video. And that's by adding as after the table name. I'll call this one EMP for employee. And for this one, I'll call the group name as GRP. And for department, we will say as DPT. And this one we need the double quote. Now I'm going to copy this alias over everywhere I see it in the select for employees. I'm going to replace this with EMP. Again, EMP. And one more time here in the select. And then we also need to do it in our where. Let's do the same thing here with group. And again, down at the bottom in our where. And then for department. And again down in our where. I'm going to try and line up these equals to make it a little more readable there. And hitting F5 to run it. And we see the exact same output. That's because this doesn't do anything functionally. It's there only to help me, the reader, read my SQL better. Kind of like comments. And I haven't said anything about comments yet, so let's do that right now. LibreOffice SQL comments use the same format as PHP, Java, C programming languages. I'm going to add a comment to the beginning. Control V to paste, and it says this is my comment. And it's got a slash asterisk, then my comment, then asterisk slash. Using this format, I can make this comment on multiple lines. The other way to do a comment is a single line comment, and that's by typing slash slash single line comment. Now, besides being useful for explaining what our SQL is going to do, let's say that I have this select and I just want to pull out the number of records affected. Remember, we've got that count, so I could say count asterisk, and then I'm going to comment out my code and rerun this. I'm hitting F5. It's showing us that the count is 15 records. 15 records are selected when I run this query. Now, I want to keep the count in here, but I just want to comment that out. I'm using my single line comment, and I'm going to take out my multi-line comment characters. Rerunning this, I'm hitting F5, and we're back to the way we had it. We haven't gone back into design view. Let's go in there right now. And we see now our table names now have the table aliases. Other than that, it's the exact same query. Let's save this as ODB40 join alias. I'm going to close the query window and save the database.